Alright, another hopefully brief project. I've got, for a lot of the shipments I do, I keep two different sizes of poly bag stock. I get it from ULINE, poly tubing as they call it. And it's just you can make paper or plastic bags out of it. Basically, I've got a wide and a narrow, and elsewhere in the basement I've got the fuser for it. The product is fine. The problem is the somewhat overpriced and incredibly cheap stands that they sell for these. These are the cheapest ones, I think, but they're just god awful for the this is really quite heavy, and even though it's sitting here at the moment it looks okay, if I start unreeling this stuff something will come apart. It's just not adequate, and they seem to come in one width, and this one's way too wide and it's always hitting the things I have adjacent. So I'm thinking of improving this, making something out of wood and wood dowel or conduit or something that will do this job. I might even keep the basic axles. You know, they may be of adequate quality, but I definitely need to replace these wire frames. And the other problem is changing these out. Being on this shelf like this, it's hard to get in there and get at them. And I'm thinking of something that'll slide, that I can slide in and off of the or on and off of the shelving a little easier. So that's part of what I'm going to be trying to think up. Well, this tubing isn't much different from electrical conduit that's been painted black, so I don't think I'm going to improve it much with what I have laying around the house. Let's see if I can get it back on here. That could be a challenge. There we go. The other thing is that these inserts have been known to pop off of there, leaving the whole thing canted and dropping down onto the axle itself. So I want to have this be a little tighter in that regard. With a roll of this material taken off of the axle, you first pop this insert out. I don't know, it's about 1 inch that it goes in. Then there's the sidewall, then there's the actual roll. So this is strong here. This is adequately strong once it's on the axle. So I think the only thing I need to do is make sure that whatever frame I come up with isn't overly wide, so it doesn't allow these to come out more than, you know, 1/8 of an inch or something. At which point, you know, it would start getting loose and be structurally less sound. Okay, I've worked out my basic design and dimensions. Going to use 1/2 inch plywood for the base. It's going to be 2 feet long. The shelves are 2 feet long, but it's not going to go completely to the back because I'm going to have a little area near the front. This is sort of where the front of the shelf will be. That'll have a hand grip that I can use to pull it out somewhat, enough to the point where I can get my hands around the axles and lift them up to change the rolls. And then the supports will be a sort of triangular support, wider at the base, with a pillow block kind of cut out at the top, and a post sticking up to align with the alignment holes in the axles that are already there. Although for the one I'm going to have to shorten it and make a new set of holes. 7 1/4 inch width between supports for the narrow one, 12 7/8 inches between supports on the wide one, and that gives me approximately 1/4 inch of clearance, which I think should be enough. I don't want it to be wider than that because then the hubs can come out a little bit, and I don't want it to be narrower because irregularities in the cardboard will mean that it could bind in there, and be hard to pull the plastic off the reels, so I think that'll be a good compromise. I want the sides to be wider for stability, and also because I'm going to put these alignment pins in there, I need the wood to be wide enough. Those are 5/16 inch OD, so I don't want to go with just 1/2 inch plywood. I don't have much 3/4 inch plywood in stock at the moment, except for my Baltic birch, which I don't want to waste on this. So I have plenty of 1/2 inch plywood of various qualities and grades. I'm just going to laminate up 2 sides to make a 1 inch support on each side, and that'll be plenty support for the axle and for the pins to go in there. Now for the pins, the only thing solid that I have is some 3/8 inch steel rod. That's not much bigger than the 5/16, so I have a metal lathe, and I might as well put it to use and make these pins and turn them down a little bit to the required diameter. I really could just be doing it the easier way and open these up a little bit, but what the heck, I've got the tool, I might as well use it. I've cut out the bases for the small and large reels, and using some more of the same scrap, I made a template for the well, they're going to be the same for the large and small wheels, but this is a template for the side pieces. And to conserve my spare scrap wood, I put these on here at a bit of an angle so the grain isn't going to go in the most pleasing direction, but this is something that will be almost never on display. So I've been able to get 4 out of them out of this little piece of scrap. Well, I'm not so lucky on the other set of 4. I was able to find a scrap that was big enough for 2 pieces, and another scrap of a hardwood outer laminate for 1 piece, but I couldn't quite fit it on the bottom, plus that part had gotten wet, and it actually got wet up into here, but I think it's still good enough condition. And then this piece of much rougher construction grade plywood, I was able to squeeze 1 piece out of there, so that one's going to be sort of a mismatched set. But the idea here is to not buy anything, just to use the junk I've got around. Alright. 8 pieces in roughly the same shape. Small variations due to the imprecision with which I laid out and cut them. But as I said before, it was a bit of a struggle to find enough scrap in decent condition half wood that would fit these pieces. Okay, I've glued and pin nail just to keep the layers from shifting around, and now I got to clamp them, but I think I can clamp them all in one stack. Okay, the side supports are glued, trimmed, sanded, and marked for where the pillow block, it's not really a pillow block, but the top part where the axle is going to sit into it, that's marked now. Okay, my 2 bases are made with handholds to pull them in and out of the shelving. And now I just have to find the optimal position for these guys to go on there. I have glued on one side there, and initially pinned it with a couple of pin nails, and then put a couple of drywall screws in to pull it tighter. Okay, clamped up with a bar of the correct length, clamped in at the top just to make sure that the verticals are vertical, and in alignment with each other. But I realized I forgot to do one step before I did this, and that was drill the 1-inch hole at these positions. So with that one I'm going to have to do it the hard way later on. These I'm going to do right up front. So there's the holes, and I really should just cut the pillow block tops off while I'm at it. I think that'll be easier now. Like that. I'm still not sure if I want to keep the tops or not. I'm going to try to just set the rolls down on the roll axles down on the pins, but in case that doesn't work out well enough, I'm retaining these in case I want to put a couple screws through and truly pillow block the thing. And there's that one given the same treatment. Well, it was definitely easier to do it that way. I can still cut the holes and cut the pillow blocks off on the other one. I'll just have to use different saws to do it. Another bright idea is to put runners, or skis if you will, on the bottom of these plates right along the edges so it's under where the weight is. And about 3/4 of an inch wide and the full 2 foot long. And that should cut down on the friction quite a lot when pulling them in and out. And I don't think it'll change the stability at all. So I think I'm going to go ahead and cut those out. So on the bandsaw, and this light isn't doing me any favors in terms of exposure, I've got my saw set up for a 45-degree miter, and that should be about appropriate, I think, to make the ends slide with a little less resistance. So I've got the rails glued and pin nailed on at this point. Okay, on this one holder with the holes that didn't get made in the proper step, the glue is dried now from the previous step, so I can work on getting these cut out. And here's a test fit of the larger polybag reel or roll in its carrier. The fit is perfect. I just need to put in the pins. And let's see how the other one fits. The fit looks good there too. This one will obviously need the shortening of the axle. I've got my 3/8 inch steel rod marked for the 4 pins. Now I gotta cut it on the bandsaw. Alright, I've got my turn down shaft there. It has a couple of little gouges in it where the I was feeding in the wrong direction with my cutting tool, and so it with the flex of the shaft here, it dug in a little bit more in a couple spots. I didn't want to file too much off of there, so I've left it with those blemishes. But basically it's what I need, and it's got the required diameter. Now I just have to do 3 more of these. Alright, all 4 are turned down. I just need to cut off the large part that was in the chuck. That's a job for the bandsaw. If I had a nice cutoff tool, I could use that, but I don't. I decided to use my hacksaw instead. I used my strip sander to clean up the ends and round over the tops of the pins for easier insertion into the holes in the reel axles. I think this came out fairly well, a few small gouges notwithstanding. Okay, the pins are glued into holes, which were made a little bit deeper than necessary, so the blue masking tape is holding them up so they don't sink down too much. I was trying to think of a good way to lift these rolls on here. They're just normally going to have these little plastic protectors sticking on like this, which is something to grab onto, but for the big roll it's not very much. And without machining something complicated, I was trying to think of something that could go in there or on there to help lift them on. And right at the moment nothing brilliant is occurring to me, but I'm still thinking about that a bit. I wanted to put some sort of paint on the pins just to keep them from rusting, and the first bottle I grabbed was a bottle of Insignia Red enamel from Testors. Maybe its brighter color will remind me not to stick my fingers under there when setting a heavy roll down. I think once this dries, it's just going to get one quickly slapped on coat of varnish. I'm not going to be really sanding these or anything. It doesn't really merit it, but they're coming together. And with a coat of varnish on them and a couple of oscillating heater fans to help the varnish dry, these are essentially done. And there they are.